So, I know that I haven't really recorded anything publicly about my journey over the last 6 months. It has actually been about, 8 months actually, since I first discovered um, that I potentially have ADHD. I have to keep saying potentially because I don't have a full diagnosis, which really, really sucks. Um, but I will explain that in a minute. So, I wanted to share what I have been, um, I guess, going through in the last 6 months. I should say 8 months, um, because I guess just to bring you up to date with how it's been for me and stuff. It's been a really, really interesting journey. And I do actually have private videos about each of the steps in my journey. So I'm now going to try and put that in one summary in this video. So, as you know, when I first, I discovered quite by accident that I might be ADHD. All my life, when I had heard of ADHD, I had never, ever, ever, ever once related to what I knew it was. I thought it was obviously, in fact, I did have a friend who had ADHD when I was at uni, and he was very, 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 very hyper and just could not stand still. And then other times he was totally cool, man. Totally cool, the sweetest and most gentle guy. His name was Daniel. I loved Daniel. And I just couldn't fathom how two completely different personalities almost could live in this one person. And then years later, I discovered that he had medication and he was that really lovely, gentle, mellow guy when he was on medication. And if he wasn't, then he was jumping off the walls. I was like, I remember that. Yeah, that makes sense. But even knowing Daniel, not once did I ever, ever, ever think to myself, I am like this guy, or I'm totally like this guy. Not once ever. I always knew in my life that I was different, that I was what people would call a bit unique, or that I was a bit weird. People would say that to my face, and I always chose to take it as a compliment because I love to be different. Why not? Why would anyone want to be the same as anyone else? We're not meant to be the same as anyone else. So when I, out of desperation, Googled, why does it take me so long to get things done? Which was really the end of my tether with trying to keep house and never comprehending why keeping house was so difficult for me when it should be something so simple. And the search result came up with ADHD, only ADHD related posts. I was like, what? Like, I was really, really, really shocked. Like, to the point where I was like, this can't be right. Did I Google the right thing? Like, this can't be right. And so I was shocked at first, like going, like never, ever, ever having ever thought that I was anything but neurotypical in my life. I very hesitantly clicked on one of the links and started reading. And I was really overwhelmed. Tears came to my eyes and not in my throat because I realized, oh my goodness, they are describing me. This is me. And the more I read over the next few hours, I was like, wow. I was like, wow, this is me all over. Like, how did I not ever know this about myself before? How did I never come across anything like this before in my 38 years of life at the time. I'm now 39. How did it? I just couldn't fathom the fact that I had never ever seen it. And so the point is, it was a completely by accident that I came across this. As I know that ADHDers get branded as attention seekers, and I have been told that to my face, that I'm attention seeking, or that I'm self-centered, or that I'm often when I was a teenager, my friends would admit to me that at first they didn't actually want to be friends with me because I seemed too like up myself, like too much of a show off, too showy, or I have no idea how on earth I could have been that, but that's how I come across, and it's a shame because it's the furthest thing from the truth. I still don't know how I come across like that, but obviously I do, because even in my adult life I have been told that I am attention seeking, or that I want everything to revolve around me, and I don't know how I give off that. Anyway, the point is that what I'm trying to make is that this is actually quite common for ADHD, as I have found out. So, why did I mention that? Okay, so the reason why I mention that is because there is absolutely no way in hell that anyone could come and tell me and say, you just want attention, so you must have been seeking for some kind of label because you just want attention. That's who you are. Nobody can come and tell me this because I outright came across my self-diagnosis quite by accident. So, since then, it's been 8 months. That's gone by really quickly. During this time, I have been coming into my own. I have been reviewing my life. I have been observing myself a lot more. I've always taken pride of the fact that I feel like I know myself really well, or like I'm really connected to the self, or connected to my body. And I think that's why coming across those links was such a huge shock, because it really hit me left of field, because I've always felt like so connected to myself. But in actual fact, it's almost like knowing that I'm potentially ADHD has given me the missing piece that I never knew was the missing piece. And I'm now able to understand myself so much better. I tear up because, like for many ADHDers, we carry a lot of shame in life. And that is very true of myself. And I guess reacting the way I'm reacting like right now proves or shows that there's still a lot of healing to be done. So there is a lot of shame that we carry, and that I carried and still battle with, because you grow up hearing, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to get emotional. You grow up hearing from all kinds of people, from your parents, from teachers, from other significant adults in your life, such as family, friends, and say church leaders, things like, but you've got such potential. I can see the potential in you. You just need to get there. And you're being reminded constantly that you are just not your utmost potential. And you also get told about the many things that should be so simple, especially by parents, you know, like, but it's so simple, why can't you do that? Why can't you do this? Or, but it's common sense, why haven't you understood this yet? Or, but you're a young lady, you should behave like one. All these kinds of things, whilst they might not be uncommon to most people, maybe a lot of people grow up hearing them. For someone with an ADHD brain, it can be especially difficult to hear those things because, as I've come to understand, we just don't get it. We just don't get it. I remember when I was a teenager, I would get berated a lot. And in all honesty, I never knew why. I could never see what the big deal was. And I've struggled with that. Like, looking back, I can see that I struggled with that a lot with my friendships, even in my 20s, with my relationships, with my marriage, and with my like relationships with in-laws, even. Like, it's, you know, you think you know how things should go, and then you find yourself in awkward positions, and you just, I just still struggle with that. I remember being in the workforce, and also struggling with things because it just didn't make sense, or things didn't make sense. So what I might struggle with and what the next person with ADHD struggles with might be completely different. Like, there are certainly very, very similar traits, but for me, knowing what's socially acceptable has been a bit of a struggle. And that might not be every ADHD person's struggle, but it has been for me. And I always put it down to having been brought up with a completely different culture, because my parents are immigrants in Australia, and of course they've taught me all the norms of like South American norms, and I always just thought, well, it's just that. There are lots of explanations that I give that are actually South American differences, and particularly South American and Australian norms are complete opposites many, many times, and that makes things really difficult. But on top of that, there have been things that I just really haven't understood why it's been out of place, or why a conversation has suddenly come to an end, or, you know, now that I understand myself a little bit better, I can see that maybe I talked too much, or that maybe I came in with a completely left of field topic that had nothing to do with what anyone was talking about, because in my ADHD brain, I connected a bazillion dots and went from A to Z and was talking about Z, and everyone's still back at A. I really get that now. But yeah. So I have come, I think, a long way in the last 8 months, and have just slowly begun to really understand me and the things I struggle with. Things like housework. I still struggle with housework. I have discovered that for me and for many ADHD women, it's either one or the other. You are either a full-blown career person and your house is chaos, or you are either a full you have a beautiful, neat home and then don't have a career. Doing both just doesn't seem to fit into the ADHD brain capacity. I've been wondering why on earth, why is it so difficult? And there are actually quite a few explanations that I've come across. Things like the fact that we tend to get distracted a lot, or the fact that we tend to hyper-focus on this one thing for hours and therefore we can't fit it all in. The other explanation for me is that I feel like my head is just so busy and so full of stuff that I literally do not have the energy to then give to my outward environment. And then other times I get into this hyper state of energy. I wish that happened more often for me, but it doesn't. It's once in a blue moon, I'm just full of energy and I just get in and do the housework. I might not do it all because as atypical ADHD-er, we tend to not just tidy up a room when we're in tidying and cleaning mood, we tend to spring clean a room. So I will spring clean the rumpus and the kitchen, for example, and then go, okay, I'm done. I wish I could concentrate on my whole entire house, but I just can't. So those are the understandings that I've come to for myself over the last 8 months. And I think that's probably all I should share tonight. I've rambled on for long enough. So yeah, I hope that you can, if you're in your early journey and you're not entirely sure about some things, maybe some of what I've shared is what you can relate to. And if you do, then yeah, feel free to share. It's nice to share with each other.